Alright guys, today's lesson I'd like to show you how to converting fractions, decimals, and percentages. So we know that fraction, decimal, percentages are just a different ways of writing the same number. And how do we do the conversion? So we start from percentage to fraction first. Now percent means out of 100. So all we need to do is to change the percent symbol, right, or percent like sign to a denominator of 100, and after we finish that, we simplify the fraction if required. So everything we're going to learn today is without using a calculator, because otherwise, like, what's the point? Using calculator, it's much easier to do the conversions here. Okay, so without using a calculator, how do we do it? So percentage to fraction. We are going to change that percentage symbol or percentage sign to a denominator that's out of 100, because percent means out of 100. Once we've finished that, what we need to do is we're going to simplify the fraction if required. All right, so let me just give you an example here first. All right, so we have 30%, and I want to convert that into fractions. How do we convert 30% to fractions? Well, firstly, remove this percentage symbol, and you change that into a denominator of 100. So 30% is equal to 30 out of 100. After you finish that, you simplify this one. That becomes 3/10. So that's how you change it. Really easy to do. And it does apply to any percentage, including like decimal numbers. So for example, if we have like 2.5%, and that's just equal to 2.5 over 100, and then we need to simplify, of course, right? 2.5 over 100 is 25 over 1,000, and then we keep doing it. All right, keep simplifying this. We can divide it by 1,000 by 25. That becomes 1/40. So that's how you do it. Okay, even with, a fraction, a percentage that's greater than 100, let's just say 120%. How do we convert this one into fractions? Well, same thing. Remove the percentage sign and change that over 100, and then we simplify. So that's equivalent to 12/10, and if we divide by 2 both the top and the bottom, we'll get 6/5. All right, so that's how we do it. Really easy and very simple to understand how to convert percentage to fraction. All right, so that's percentage to fraction. What about fraction to percentage? How do we convert from fraction to a percentage? So the reverse process. Now, converting from fraction to percentage, well, the way we do it is we multiply by 100%. If we have a calculator, we just multiply by 100%, and the calculator will give us, our answer, right? The answers we need. But the idea behind is we do need to change the fraction into a decimal before we can change that into percentage. All right, so that's something that's slightly harder to do. All right. So we need to change the fraction, unless the fraction is like a common fraction, like for example half, then we know it's 50%, or a quarter, then we know that's 25%, or 3/4, that's 75%. Otherwise, we do need to change the fraction to decimal here first, and then we'll change the decimal to percentage. All right, so that's the process behind. Now, I'll definitely teach you how to change a fraction to decimals, but to show you an example here, we have something like 2/5. Right, now for the number for a fraction 2/5, there's a way we can do it without changing that into percentage, into decimal here first, right? Before we can change that into percentage. The way we do it is we try to make the denominator out of 100. 5 is a nice number. We can make a denominator out of 100 by multiplying both the top and the bottom by 20. All right, because 5 times by 20 is equal to 100. So by doing that, you can see that's equal to 100, and the numerator is equal to 40. So therefore, it is out of 100 now, and then it's 40%. So that's something that's really easy to do when you have a denominator that's easily been changed into a hundreds, or at least affect a multiple of a hundreds. But what happens if you can't change the denominator to hundreds? Right? If we have 1/8 or 3/8, how do we do this calculation here? So 1/8. How do we convert this one into a percentage? Well, 8 is not that easy to change that into hundreds. All right. So what we need to do is we sort of need to change that number into decimal here first, before we can change that into percentage. If you don't want to do that, there's another way you can do it. We just simply times by 100%. We multiply by 100% and you simplify this. So that just equal to 100/8%, and we try to simplify what's 100/8. If we divide both the top and the bottom by 4, that gives us 25/2%, and then 25 divided by 2 is 12.5%. All right, so that's one way you can do it if you don't want to convert into decimals. Now, if you do want to convert that into decimals, then 1/8, if you do a long division, is equal to 0.125. And then if you want to times this one by 100%, then that gives you 12.5%. All right, so that's the way to do it. Okay, so this is how you change from fractions to percentage. All right, so the next one is how do we do convert percentage to a decimal? All right, percentage to a decimal. So this is fraction to percentage. And how do we do it? Percentage to a decimal. Okay. All right. Now, percentage to decimals, all we have to do is simply divide the percentage by 100%. So therefore, move the decimal point 2 places to the left. All right, so really easy again. Very simple to do. It's divided by 100%. Division means move the decimal point 2 places to the left. Alright, so you need to remember it's to the left, not to the right, because you divide by 100, okay? Not times by 100. So for example, if we have like a 45%, and I want to convert this one to a decimal number, how do we do it? Well, we simply change that and divide this number by 100%, and we know that we move the decimal point 2 places to the left, alright? So previously the decimal point is here, so that's 1 and 2. And now that becomes the new decimal point, and we just add a 0 in the front of it. So the answer will be 0.45. All right, let me show you another example here. 12.5%, no, we did 12.5% before, all right, sorry, something slightly different. 22.6%. How do we convert this one into decimals? Well, we do 22.6% divided by 100%. So we move the decimal point to the left by 2 places. So that's my decimal point here. 1, 2. 2 places to the left. And that gives us 0.226. All right. What about another example that's a really small number here? 0.5%. What do we do? Well, same thing. 0.5% divided by 100%. Move the decimal point 2 places to the right, 2 places to the left. 1, 2. All right, so that gives you 0.005. Okay. Okay, because that's the previous decimal point there. All right, so that's pretty easy, converting from percentage to decimal. All right, what about the other way around? How do we convert decimals to percentage? Well, previously it's divided by 100%. Now you just multiply by 100%. So you just therefore move the decimal point 2 places to the right. All right, so decimal to percentage. So So instead of divide, this time we multiply. So multiply by 100%. So therefore, that just means move the decimal point two places to the right. Okay, previously it's moved to the left. Now it's just moved the decimal point two places to the right. All right, so an example for that will be 0.57, and you want to convert that into percentage. Well, 0.57, we times this number by 100%, and if you times the number by 100%, you move the decimal point two places to the right, 1, 2, and then you get 57%. All right, that's how you do it. Very simple, very easy to understand here. All right, what about 0.6? Well, same thing, 0.6 times by 100%. Move the decimal point two places to the right, 1, and that becomes 6, and one more, so it becomes 60. So that becomes 60, and make sure you remember to put a percentage symbol at the end. So that's really easy to do. All right, so now we just have, I believe we've got two more to do, all right, which is the fraction and decimal conversions. Now, with fraction and decimal conversions, what you need to understand is all about like a long division. All right, so if you want to convert from fractions to decimals, it's long division. And if you want to convert decimals to fractions, that's slightly harder. All right, so I'd like to show you how to do that. Okay, fraction to decimals. All right, so fraction to decimal without using a calculator, and then if the fraction is not a special fraction, then long division is or short division is the way to do. All right, long, or short division. So an example here would be 2/7. Now, 2/7, if you want to convert that into decimals, well, it's not a special fraction here. So what you need to do is to try to do a long division, and then obviously if this is not terminating decimals, you just have to repeat it. Keep doing the calculation until you get a certain decimal places where the question asks you to stop, right? So we need to put 0 point, that's 20. The first number I need to put is 2. 2 times 7 is 14. 6 left. Put 0 again. All right, continue the process. 8. 56, and that becomes 4. All right, as you can see. So now you're going to continue the process one more time. I believe that's 5, so that's 35. Keep going. All right, so I don't think this is going to be a recurring decimals. All right, it's just going to go forever, and there is no pattern, but we can try. Maybe there's a pattern behind, right? We don't know until we get more digits, right? Right now you can't really see any patterns. Well, let's see if there's any patterns there. Right, so the next one is 7, so 49, and that's 1. Still, I don't think there's any pattern here, so 10. All right, continue for that. 14, here's 6. Ooh, now let's have a look. We've got 6, and we had a 60 before. So it looks like the pattern continues. So the next one that you need to put after 2 is 8. Okay, so that becomes 56. So as you can see, we have the pattern. So the pattern starts from this, sorry, I'm pretty sure I made a mistake here. It should be a 1. All right, because that doesn't work. Yep, I made a mistake. Okay. All right, let me just change that number here. Not possible to have a 2, all right? So because 14 is greater than 10. Okay, so that's 7, 30. All right, so that would be a 4. That's 28. 2. Okay, all right. After this, now back to 2. So we'll start with 2 here, back to 2. So it will be 20 again. So I believe it will be repeating. So it is a recurring decimal. All right. So 2 divided by 7 is a recurring decimal, and the repeating digits will be 285714, and it will go on 285714, and then continues. All right, so that number is going to be 0.285714, and we're just going to place a horizontal line on top of the number there. Okay, yes, well, this question here, not an easy question if you do a pen and paper, but now obviously later you can use a calculator to do the conversion, so a fraction to decimal is not going to be that hard if you just use a calculator. If you don't use a calculator, yes, long division is the way to do the question, okay? All right, now the last one I'd like to do is the decimals to fraction. Oops. All right, so how do we convert from decimals to fraction? Let me just give you an example straight away. If we have 0.5, we know that's equal to half, right? But how do we know it? How do we do it properly using pen and paper? What we need to do is look at decimal place, all right? 0.5 is 1 decimal place. So 1 decimal place means we divide the number by 10. All right, so 1 decimal place means divided by 10. 2 decimal places means divided by 100. Once we finish that, we simplify the fraction, and we'll get the answer. So that's how we do it. So another example will be 0.23. So firstly, decide how many decimal places you can see from here. So it's 2 decimal places. So we divide 23 by 100. 2 means like 2 zeros, okay? So divided by 100, and then we'll try to simplify if we can, all right? So 23 divided by 100, 23 over 100, you can't really simplify that. That becomes the answer. What about 0.55? So again, 2 decimal places. So that will be 5 or 55 divided by 100, and then we need to simplify the number. So it's 11 over 20. That's how you do it. Now, what about recurring decimals, right? How do we convert recurring decimals to fractions? Right now, this is not something that you need to know, how to convert from the recurring decimals to fractions. It will be in the later topics, all right? But I can show you, all right, for one example here. So what happens if we have like 0.12, and that's recurring? So like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. How do we convert this one into a fraction? Well, obviously, if you have a calculator, you just press the digit 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 so many times, and then you press equal. Your calculator will give you the fraction. All right? How do we do it? Using pen and paper. You do need to know a little bit about algebra to do this calculation here. So, for example, if we let x equals to 0.12121212. All right, then the next step is we look at the number. All right, so 2 digits are repeating. So therefore, we times everything by 100, both the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So we times by 100. Again, you don't really need to know for this, all right, for this exercise, but just a good example to show you. So that becomes 12.12, 12, goes on. All right, so the reason I want to times by 100 is because now the digits are lining up after the decimal point. Okay, they're all lining up if you look at that. All of those digits are lining up. So now what I can do is if we subtract both sides, all right, so 100 subtract x, 100x divided, minus x is equal to 99x. And then we do 12.12121212 minus 0.12121212. All of those 1212 are those repeating digits after the decimal point. It's going to cancel, right? So that becomes 12 minus 0. So 12 minus 0 is equal to 12. So now you get 12 divided by 99 when you solve the equation. So now if you simplify, that becomes 4 over 33. All right, so that's how you change it. All right, 4 over 33 is equivalent to 0.12 recurring, and that's the way to do it. But this is not what you need to know for this exercise. All right, it's just an extra stuff that is, you later you got to learn how to do this one properly. Okay. All right, so that's the lesson I want to teach you today. Yes, pretty easy, but there's quite a few things that you need to remember without using a calculator. How do we convert from fraction to percentage to decimals and vice versa? Yeah, practice those questions in the exercise will definitely help you to understand how to do it using pen and paper. All right, thank you.